In our previous lesson, we learned about Gregor Mendel and his work with pea plants. In today's lesson, we're going to apply Mendel's principles to predict the results of genetic crosses. Our essential question is, how can inheritance be predicted? Our objective for today's lesson is to determine how we can use probability to predict traits. Get your notebooks ready, be prepared to take notes during this lesson, and be on the lookout for these vocabulary terms. Imagine a coin toss. What are the chances that the coin will land on heads or tails? Probability is the likelihood that a particular event will occur. There's some important vocabulary that we should review first. Think of Mendel's pea plants. Some pea plants have purple flowers and some have white. That's their phenotype, the outward appearance of a trait. What we can't see is what's going on the inside. That's the genotype, the genetic makeup of the organism. Some purple plants might have two alleles for being purple. Some may have an allele for purple and an allele for white. And the white flowers have two alleles for white. When writing genotypes, we always use the letter of the dominant trait. So if green pea pods are dominant to yellow, we'll use G for green. Uppercase letters represent dominant traits. Lowercase letters are for recessives. So big G gives us the phenotype of green. Big G is also the phenotype green. Little g are yellow pea pods. Remember that for every trait, there are always two copies of each allele, inherited from each parent. If an individual is homozygous, that means they have two of the same alleles. For instance, two copies of the tall gene, or two copies of the short gene. Heterozygous individuals have two different alleles. For example, one allele for tall and one allele for short. Let's practice how to use Punnett squares to predict the results of genetic crosses. A Punnett square is a diagram that uses mathematical probability to help predict the genotype and phenotype combinations in genetic crosses. Let's look at our first problem. In pea plants, green pea pod are dominant to yellow. Cross a homozygous green plant with a yellow plant. Remember, green is dominant to yellow, so we'll use G's for green. We need to cross a homozygous green plant with a yellow plant. Homozygous means two of the same alleles. Big G times little g. Little g's represent the recessive allele, in this case, yellow. Now we're ready to set up our Punnett square. The homozygous green plant is written on the top of the square. The yellow plant is written on the side. Now we fill in the Punnett square to show all the possible combinations of alleles. Our results show that when we cross a homozygous green plant with a yellow plant, that all of the offspring will be big G, little g. That means that they will all be green. Let's try another practice problem. In pea plants, green pea pod are dominant to yellow. This time, let's cross two heterozygous green plants. Think about how you will write out the genotypes of these two parents. Green is dominant, so we'll use G for green. We're crossing two heterozygous plants. That means two different alleles. So our parents are big G and big G little g. Let's get ready to set up the Punnett square. Here we've taken each parent. One parent is on the top of the Punnett square and one is on the side. We filled in all the letters to show all the possible combinations of alleles. What do you notice about the offspring? When we look at the genotypes of the offspring, we see that about 25% will be big G, 50% big G, and 25% little g. If we think about the phenotypes, that means that 75% of the offspring will be green and 25% will be yellow. Take a minute to review your notes. Do you feel you've met the lesson objectives? Bring any questions you have with you to live class.